The story begins in an isolated castle surrounded by dragons and unimaginable creatures. Inside, the hero Vermouth and his 4 comrades advance toward the Demon King's hideout. They push through hordes of wyverns and undead. The great Vermouth slashes enemies with his sacred sword. The wise Sienna wields elemental magic to eradicate obstacles. The faithful Anise summons her god's blessing to cleanse the evil. The brave Moron swings his giant axe, smashing every foe in his path. And finally, the foolish Hamel charges forward, wielding his sword to cut down his enemies. After a fierce encounter, we learn that Hamel has always been jealous of Vermouth, even viewing him as a rival. Yet, no one else acknowledges this rivalry. They press onward, but suddenly Hamel screams Vermouth's name with all his strength. A swift attack speeds toward Vermouth, who remains unaware. At the last moment, Hamel throws himself in front of Vermouth, taking a devastating, piercing strike. Hamel spits blood as Vermouth stands frozen in shock. The monster retracts its tentacle, readying for another attack, while Hamel collapses to the ground, fatally wounded. The creature laughs and prepares to strike again. This time, Vermouth, fully focused, charges forward and slashes the monster in one swift strike, leaving it no chance to counter. Hamel's companions rush to his side, panic etched across their faces. Vermouth, unable to meet his eyes, says he didn't have to die like this. Hamel, even in his dying moments, smiles and says, "This is an honorable way to die." As death approaches, Hamel asks Vermouth to kill the remaining demon kings. Vermouth takes his hand and swears, as a hero, to fulfill that promise. Hamel bids farewell to Anise, Moron, and Sienna. With his last breath, he begins to confess his feelings to Sienna. But suddenly, a foot stomps down on the page, shattering the story's flow. A white-haired boy yells toward the sky, furious. He shouts that he never said any of those things. No matter how many times he reads it, the story infuriates him. The anonymous author is lucky to remain unknown, or he'd find and beat them senseless. He keeps complaining, irritated that he's the only one called an idiot in the book. He wonders if someone he defeated 300 years ago could have written it. Tossing the book aside, he questions why the other 4 left the story as it is. But in the end, he doesn't blame them. After all, who could have predicted he'd reincarnate with all his memories intact? And that's not all. Besides being the same Hamel, he never expected to reincarnate as a descendant of the hero Vermouth. This is our protagonist, Eugene Lionheart, formerly known as Hamel, the Foolish. When Vermouth was alive, he had a wife and many concubines. The part of the family considered the direct line consisted only of the offspring from his main wife. Our protagonist, despite bearing the Lionheart surname, was part of the collateral line. The family holds an event called the Bloodline Continuation Ceremony, and before it, no member of the collateral line is allowed to train with mana or real swords. For this reason, Eugene has only trained with a wooden sword until now. Using the sword, he strikes the dummy with precision, and, with a powerful slash, cuts it in half. His father appears, startled by his son's extraordinary talent. He becomes even more uneasy when he examines his son's physique, unable to believe Eugene is only 13 years old. Eugene speaks with a tone that doesn't match his age and shows no sign of naivety. His father mentions that the Bloodline Continuation Ceremony will take place tomorrow. This event is a tradition held once every 10 years in the Lionheart family. During the ceremony, both the main and collateral lines compete to determine who is worthy of being called a Lionheart. All children between the ages of 10 and 15 gather at the main Lionheart estate to participate. However, the event seems rigged against the collateral lines, as only the main line is allowed to train with weapons and mana, giving them an overwhelming advantage. Eugene's father believes his son has immense talent, so much so that even he questions if Eugene is truly his child. If Eugene had been talentless like his father, he wouldn't have to endure the pain of comparing himself to the gifted. Eugene snaps his father back to reality, questioning why he's wearing such an expression. His father embraces him and pleads with him to avoid confrontation with the children from the direct line, warning that talent alone cannot overcome their advantages. Eugene promises to steer clear of conflict, but inwardly, he plans the opposite. Smirking, he considers the ceremony will be boring since it's essentially a competition between 10-year-old children. He spots another dummy and approaches it slowly. As he walks, he analyzes his main obstacles: a child from the first wife and twins from the second wife of the direct line. The rest he considers trash. With another powerful slash, he destroys the dummy into pieces. Smiling maliciously, he grows excited at the thought of testing the strength of his former rival's descendants. On his way to the ceremony by carriage, Eugene reflects on his past. As a child, he learned skills easily, even considering himself a genius. But upon meeting Vermouth, he realized there were true geniuses in the world. Vermouth was proficient in both swordsmanship and magic, earning the title of the God of War. He was a duke in his homeland before relinquishing his title and was celebrated as a hero until the very end. His other three comrades also achieved greatness. The wise Sienna became the youngest head wizard of the Magic Tower. The faithful Anise, known as a saintess, left teachings that are still followed today. The brave Moron established his own kingdom. Eugene's thoughts suddenly turn to rage as he wonders why the Demon King is still alive after all this time. Vermouth had promised to eradicate all the Demon Kings. Eugene recalls his own death at the castle of the Demon King of Incarceration. He remembers the promise Vermouth made with that demon after his death. A promise that was the first step toward peace in the world. 300 years have passed, and that peace still persists to this day. His escort interrupts his thoughts, noticing Eugene looks tense. He advises him to relax, warning that life at the main house will be difficult otherwise. Finally, they arrive. A massive gate stands before Eugene, and his escort welcomes him to the main estate of the Lionheart. He finally enters, but his surroundings are completely empty. He isn't even surprised that no one has come to welcome a member of the collateral line. His gaze falls on one of the flags in the house, displaying the symbol of a lion. Only the direct descendants of Lionheart are allowed to wear that emblem on their left chest. Eugene asks his escort if any of his relatives have arrived yet. The escort replies that he is the first to arrive and proceeds to show him the house. When they reach his room, a maid introduces herself as Nina and explains that she will serve him during his stay. Eugene asks Nina if she knows when his relatives will arrive. She answers that they will arrive within 4 days at the latest. Eugene then asks her to show him the training gym, leaving her surprised. Elsewhere in the house, two siblings are discussing the identity of the newcomer. The brother mentions that Eugene is from the west of the empire, mocking him for being more familiar with a pitchfork than a sword. He adds that the carriage must now be reeking of cow manure and says he will teach Eugene how to care for the family's property. The sister laughs, agreeing with her brother's plan. The brother calls her Seal and clarifies that he doesn't intend to punish Eugene, only give him a friendly warning. Ciel continues laughing as they prepare to leave. However, another child has been watching them from the shadows. Noticing him, Ciel glares menacingly, forcing the child to quickly hide behind the curtains. Eugene is now training on the field using a spear weighted with sandbags. In his previous life, he was never lazy with training, but in this new body, he pushes himself to the extreme. No matter how far he goes, his body handles it with ease, and minor injuries heal incredibly fast. He chuckles to himself, marveling at the extraordinary condition of Vermouth's descendant. Eugene continues making swift movements with the spear, and Nina watches in disbelief. She cannot fathom how he can execute those moves with sandbags strapped to his spear and arms. Suddenly, a voice startles Nina. It is Cyan, accompanied by Ciel. Cyan asks Nina what Eugene is doing. Nina stammers nervously, trying to respond while wondering why the siblings are there. Cyan grows impatient and demands a proper answer. Eugene stops his training and replies that he is obviously training with a spear. He finishes his sentence by calling Cyan an idiot. Ciel laughs at her brother, pointing out that a so-called country kid just insulted him. Cyan, furious, demands an immediate apology from Eugene. Eugene agrees and delivers a quick, casual apology, leaving Cyan momentarily stunned. Cyan regains his composure and insists on a proper apology, demanding Eugene bow his head politely. Eugene dismisses the demand, stating there is no reason to bow since they are of the same age and should be friends. Kian refuses the idea of being friends. He declares that although Eugene might be a Lionheart, they are not equals. Ciel interrupts and reminds her brother to bring up the carriage. Cyan immediately orders Eugene to clean the carriage, claiming it must reek of cow manure because of him. Eugene remains calm and asks Nina if she is his servant, just to check. When she confirms, he instructs her to clean the carriage instead. Nina looks confused, caught between conflicting orders. Cyan becomes enraged at Eugene for directing the maid to do what he had ordered. Furious, he introduces himself as Cyan Lionheart, attempting to assert his dominance. Eugene responds nonchalantly, introducing himself in return and suggesting they get along. Ciel waves cheerfully and introduces herself, further frustrating Cyan. Cyan declares that he will not get along with Eugene for ignoring his commands. Spotting a wooden sword on the ground, Cyan picks it up. Feeling his honor has been insulted, he challenges Eugene to a duel. Eugene reminds him that a duel is serious and shouldn't be taken lightly. He asks him to leave, but Cyan responds by asking if he's scared, striking a nerve in Eugene. Cyan adds that if Eugene is scared, he should keep his head down and apologize. Eugene calmly replies that he's not scared, but he doesn't want to fuel the situation or apologize. Frustrated, Cyan insults Eugene's parents, claiming they failed to teach him honor for running away. Eugene grows tired of Cyan's bluffing and removes his sandbags, signaling his readiness for the duel. After releasing the last of his sandbags, he demands Cyan to toss the handkerchief. Cyan hesitates as he notices the heavy impact of the sandbags on the floor, realizing they weren't just props. The thought of backing out crosses his mind, but having demanded the duel, he can't back off now. If he does, Seal will mock him for the rest of his life. Determined, Cyan grabs the handkerchief and prepares to punish Eugene. He officially starts the duel by tossing the handkerchief into the air. As it falls, Eugene bends into a ready stance, accepting the challenge. The moment it touches the ground, Eugene lunges forward, striking Cyan directly in the stomach and sending him flying back with ease. Cyan's face twists in pain and shock, but Eugene remains stoic. Eugene declares himself the winner since Cyan fails to stand up. Ciel rushes to her brother, concerned for his condition. Cyan is clearly unwell, releasing his breakfast after the blow to his stomach. Ciel turns to Eugene, accusing him of being unfair and dishonorable. Eugene questions why it was unfair, pointing out that the duel began the moment the handkerchief was tossed. What happened next was Cyan's fault for being careless. Ciel reluctantly agrees, but tries to argue that Eugene has been secretly training mana. Eugene denies it, stating that the collateral line is forbidden from training mana. Unconvinced, Ciel calls him a liar, arguing there's no way to deliver such an attack without using mana. She adds that even if her brother had been prepared for the attack, the outcome would have been the same. Eugene smirks, impressed by her sharp observation skills. However, he notes that Cyan's loss wasn't entirely one-sided, as he managed to jump back instinctively when sensing the attack. Despite this, Eugene concludes that as one of Vermouth's descendants, Cyan is still trash. Cyan finally stands up, using what little energy he has left to call Eugene's victory cheap. Eugene laughs, pointing out that the twins seem to share the same excuses. He approaches Cyan, urging him to admit defeat, reminding him that he is an honorable member of the main Lionheart family. Cyan, consumed by his pride, refuses to acknowledge his loss. At that moment, a butler appears, calling out to Cyan and sparing him further humiliation. Eugene observes the butler, deducing that he must be a skilled knight hired by the family. Cyan calls the butler Hezar and runs to him, crying over his defeat by a so-called country bumpkin. Through his tears, Cyan continues lamenting the loss in a duel he initiated, confusing Hezar with the mention of a duel. Hezar and Eugene exchange introductions. After formalities, Hezar, visibly concerned, asks for an explanation. Eugene recounts how Cyan demanded a duel after insulting his father. Cyan tries to deny it, but Eugene reminds everyone of being called a coward because his father supposedly didn't teach him honor. With a serious gaze, Eugene asks Hezar if such insults weren't reason enough to accept the duel. Hezar is momentarily speechless before admitting that the reasoning is valid. He escorts Cyan inside the house to tend to his injuries. As they leave, Ciel waves cheerfully, looking forward to their next encounter with Eugene. Eugene stoically bids her farewell. Later, Eugene enjoys a grand feast when Nina approaches him with news. She informs him that 3 more young masters will arrive by tomorrow morning, with 2 more expected in the evening. Eugene realizes that everyone is gathering quickly due to the start of the bloodline continuation ceremony. He steps outside, looking up at the sky, speaking to his former ally. He apologizes in advance for what he's about to do to his descendants. But he reasons that his former ally shouldn't be upset, as Eugene never asked to be reborn as one of his descendants. Inside the mansion, Hazel, Cyan, and Ciel stand before Anasilia, the mother of the twins and second wife of the main line. She wants confirmation of her son's loss to a child from the collateral line. Hazel confirms with an ashamed expression. Anasilia calls Cyan to approach. She presses her fan against his wound, tension building as she mentions it took only 1 strike to beat him. She asks Hezar if he is completely sure Eugene has no experience with mana. Hezar confirms, adding that he sensed no trace of mana in Eugene's body. She turns to Ciel and asks her to explain how Cyan lost. Ciel explains that Eugene's thrust was so fast that Cyan couldn't retreat or avoid it. Cyan tries to speak, lifting his head to explain, but Anacilia immediately slaps him. Her patience wears thin as she begins yelling. She asks how Cyan could lose to someone so lowly, someone unable to use mana. Her anger rises as she wonders how she will explain this to his father when he returns for the bloodline continuation ritual. Cyan cries, begging for forgiveness. Anacilia shifts her focus to Hezar. She tells him that if he wasn't her husband's favored knight, she would kill him on the spot. She orders him to take Cyan and train him harder to avoid further embarrassment. Hezar takes Cyan and leaves. The boy continues to cry, his cheeks swelling from the slap. When Ciel and Anacilia are alone, she tells Ciel to stay close to Eugene. Ciel asks why, and Anacilia replies that Eugene is already strong enough to defeat her brother. Internally, Anacilia is boiling with rage. She wants nothing more than to kill Eugene, but knows it's impossible, as she would be the first suspect. The last thing she wants is to attract the attention of the family guardians. Ciel accepts her mother's order, adding that she wanted to learn more about Eugene and become his friend. In the afternoon, Eugene is running with sandbags on his arms and legs. Nina calls out to him, saying more young masters have arrived. She adds that the head of the family has also reached the mansion. Nina nervously asks Eugene to change his clothes to greet him. He replies that he will go as he is since he doesn't want to be late. Everyone gathers in front of the main entrance, waiting for the head of the family. Eugene focuses on recognizing the people around him. He spots the twins standing with Anacilia, the second wife of the main line. On the other side, he sees Theonis, the legal wife, and her son Iode Lionheart, the first in the line of succession. The sound of horses announces the arrival of Gilad Lionheart, the head of the family, accompanied by his younger brother Guion. Gilad greets his first son and asks if his abilities have grown with him. Iode lowers his gaze, nervously replying that he is doing his best to meet his father's expectations. Gilad's expression shows his displeasure, but shifts when he sees the twins. Ciel cheerfully greets him, saying she missed him. He finally looks at the children of the collateral line and invites them to have a meal together. It is the perfect moment to discuss the bloodline continuation ritual. At the dining table, the head of the family and the children are gathered. Two individuals catch Eugene's attention, a muscular boy named Gargis and a girl named Desira. Their presence intrigues him as their carriages arrived alongside the head of the family, suggesting their families hold significant standing with the main line. Eugene's gaze shifts to a blonde boy sitting at the table. Unlike the others, he seems unrelated to the family. Ciel notices him too and asks her father who he is. Gilad explains that he planned to introduce him later but agrees to do it now. The blonde boy stands, cheerfully introducing himself as Loberian from the Red Tower. The children are visibly surprised, including Eugene, who nearly spits out his tea. Eugene quickly deduces that Loberian must be the disciple of one of Sienna's disciples. 3 centuries ago, Sienna had become the youngest tower master of the Green Tower and revolutionized magical studies. Her influence extended to the Red Tower, where she trained other tower masters. Even today, she is revered as the grandmaster of both towers. Gilad turns to Eugene and asks if he's the child mentioned by his first wife. He comments on how Cyan insulted Eugene and his father, causing Cyan to tremble nervously. Eugene confirms but assures him he holds no grudges. Gilad remarks that Eugene likely feels this way because he won the duel. Eugene counters, saying that even if he had lost, his response would have been the same. He would have endured the shame of not defending his honor. Impressed, Gilad commends Eugene, calling him better than his son. Turning to Cyan, he says he's not ashamed of his defeat but disappointed in his reaction. Cyan started the duel with insults but hasn't apologized for his actions even after losing. Cyan stammers, trying to explain himself, but Gilad cuts him off. As a descendant of the Great Vermouth, Cyan must learn to honor not only himself but also his opponents. Reluctantly, Cyan faces Eugene and forces out an apology. Gilad shifts his attention back to Eugene, asking if his father trained him to fight. Eugene replies that while his father taught him the basics, the rest he learned on his own. Gargis and Desira, astonished, whisper to each other about how Eugene managed to defeat Cyan without formal training. Gilad, visibly pleased, smiles in anticipation of the upcoming ceremony. As the doors to the hall open, maids enter, carrying trays of food. Gilite invites everyone to enjoy the meal, officially starting the feast. After they've eaten, Gilite addresses the group, explaining why they've been gathered. He criticizes the traditional methods of the ceremony, calling them discriminatory. The main line enjoys a clear advantage, with access to mana training and real weapons, making it nearly impossible for collateral line children to excel. Gilite expresses his desire to test the potential of all the children equally. The ceremony should prove their lineage as Vermouth's descendants, not emphasize the division between main and collateral lines. Eugene listens, surprised by how kind this descendant of Vermouth seems compared to his ancient friend. Gilite announces he has enlisted Loberian's help for this new ceremony. At this, the blonde mage snaps his fingers, conjuring a holographic map over the table. Loberian explains the ceremony. The children will explore a magical maze he created. Their mission is to defeat the elite monster at its center, navigating various obstacles along the way. He assures them everything inside is an illusion, no matter how real it seems. He encourages them to treat it as an action-packed adventure. The ceremony will conclude when one of the 9 children defeats the boss, with performance points awarded based on their achievements. Eugene asks what the winner will receive. Gilite grins and reveals the prize, one of the treasures hidden in the family's treasure chamber. The mention of this draws a wide smile from Eugene. After the gathering, Eugene wanders through the mansion's dimly lit halls, already imagining the treasure he will claim. Confident of his victory, he contemplates his options. Suddenly, he notices Gargus and Desira waiting for him, their expressions serious. Gargus immediately asks Eugene if it is true that he won a duel against Tyan Lionheart. Eugene affirms but doesn't stop and walks past them, showing no interest in their lingering questions. Outside the house, Eugene is training with his sword. Once again, he notices the presence of Gargus and Desira, wondering why they refuse to leave. Gargus approaches him, standing directly in front of him. Without warning, he removes his shirt, revealing his muscular build, and offers Eugene the chance to touch them. Eugene declines without hesitation. Gargi mentions that his family produces a powerful medicine that enhances muscle growth, which sounds suspiciously like steroids. He asks Eugene if he's interested, but Eugene dismisses the suggestion, remarking that he didn't come all this way for something like that. Desira steps in, joking that the medicine makes you grow a beard regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. Shifting the topic, she asks why Eugene is training with a sword when he defeated Cyan using a spear. Eugene explains that he is skilled in both weapons. Without hesitation, Desira throws a spear toward him, challenging him to a duel since the spear is her specialty. Eugene finds her far easier to deal with than Gargus and agrees, seeing this as an opportunity to gauge the abilities of the top families from the collateral line. They prepare for the duel, taking their positions. Eugene continues to wonder why Gargus is still there. Gargus responds by declaring himself the judge, insisting on a fair duel while striking an odd pose. Eugene finds his behavior reminiscent of Moron and wonders if he's truly a descendant of Vermouth. Desira stands ready, her irritation evident. She is determined to show Eugene that spearmanship is not to be underestimated. Gargus signals the start of the duel, and Desira charges forward with impressive speed. Yet, she halts abruptly, startled by Eugene's stance. She cannot discern any flaws in his posture. Eugene, unfazed, urges her to continue. Annoyed, Desira rushes at him again, clashing her spear against his. She attacks repeatedly, but Eugene blocks every strike with ease. He acknowledges her talent, even without the use of mana, and recognizes her potential. However, at her current level, she poses no challenge to him. Mocking her, he questions why none of her attacks have landed, further fueling her frustration. Desira is unable to comprehend how Eugene can deflect all her strikes without moving from his position. Determined, she regains her composure and unleashes a flurry of rapid attacks, all of which Eugene effortlessly blocks. Suddenly, she executes a swift maneuver, positioning herself behind him and launching a decisive attack, convinced it is impossible for him to counter. Eugene swiftly leaps over the tip of her spear, driving it into the ground and immobilizing it. With his spear aimed directly at her face, Gargus concludes the duel, declaring Eugene Lionheart as the victor. In the middle of the night, Gargus wakes Eugene, insisting they need to combine their strengths. Irritated, Eugene asks if he was woken up just to hear that. He continues, explaining that they'll enter the labyrinth through different gates so they can't join forces. However, Gargus refutes, saying the destination is the same, the boss in the middle. He guesses the kids from the main line will try to work together too. Eugene asks if Gargus's plan is to use their combined abilities to defeat the boss, and Gargus confirms. But Eugene insists he's more than capable of defeating the boss on his own. Suddenly, Desira appears behind him and comments that Eugene is full of himself. She acknowledges his strength, and with his help, they can definitely defeat the boss. Eugene questions why she's so determined to beat the boss. Desira responds that the collateral line has never won a blood continuation ritual. But this time, with Eugene's victory over Cayenne, they have a chance. She asks Eugene, "Don't you want to beat the main line?" Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Anasilia is thinking about the master of the Red Tower and his potential choice to take Iode Lionheart as his apprentice. Iode has shown an early interest in magic and taught himself bits of it. If he does become the disciple of the Red Tower Master, she assumes he'll have to leave the house, effectively giving up his position in the succession and clearing the way for her children. However, there's still the issue of the bloodline continuation ritual. She's angry that her son lost to a child from the collateral line. But if Eugene beats the labyrinth, she knows the direct line will be humiliated, overshadowing Cyan's loss. 3 days later, the bloodline continuation ceremony finally begins. Lobarian summons blue flames in the hands of every child and tells them to use that flame to create their weapons. They need to mold the light using their imagination. Ciel is the first to succeed, creating a light sword. After testing it, she asks what they should do if the weapon breaks. Lobarian answers that the weapons and obstacles in the labyrinth are made of magic and will never break. Ciel then asks if they can create an animal instead of a weapon. But Lobarian clarifies that while they can create anything, living creatures are forbidden. Iode asks why that is. Lobarian explains that creating life is a power only living creatures possess, and attempting to replicate it is considered a taboo. The other children begin to create their weapons. Gargus forms a giant sword, Desira a spear, Cyan a sword, and Eugene a short sword with a shield. Suddenly, Ciel asks Eugene what he would do if they meet in the labyrinth and curiously wonders if he's going to fight her. Eugene turns to Gillate, asking if fighting is allowed. Gillate confirms that it is a competition, but cooperation and quick judgment are also important, as they are all part of the Lionheart family. Upon hearing the word family, Ciel blushes slightly and flashes Eugene a bright smile, making him feel uncomfortable. Once everyone has their weapons, Lobarian asks them to put on the necklaces he's creating with magic. He explains that these necklaces are connected to their consciousness. If they experience a great deal of stress, the necklace will react, and he'll be able to assess whether he should intervene. Finally, if they feel they can't continue, all they need to do is hold the necklace's gem and shout, "Help me." This will instantly transport them out of the labyrinth. Lobarian invites everyone to enter through the magic gate, assuring them they will appear in different parts of the labyrinth, even though they all use the same entrance. The children begin to move forward, and before entering, Ciel cheerfully wishes Eugene good luck, making him uncomfortable once again. Eugene steps into the labyrinth, the darkness reminding him of his old adventures with his party. He starts swinging his sword, careful not to hit the walls. This was his strategy all along. In confined spaces like these, a short sword and a shield are the best options. He recalls being in a labyrinth for children, so this challenge will be a piece of cake. Inside the labyrinth, a group of slimes charges at one of the 9 kids. The kid, clearly inexperienced in combat, immediately activates the magic stone in his necklace and calls for help. Lobarian materializes out of thin air and swiftly removes him from the area. An hour has passed, and 3 of the kids have already given up. Gillate looks at them with disappointment, telling them to rest. Ashamed, they follow his command. The ceremony continues, with Gillate and Lobarian now in a special tent filled with screens that display the kids' progress. They focus first on Gargus, who is currently fighting a goblin. When he swings his giant sword, it gets stuck. But with brutal force, Gargus breaks through the wall and decapitates the goblin. Next, they turn their attention to Desira. She encounters a group of slimes and swiftly pierces each one. However, she knows blades aren't effective against slimes, so she avoids further confrontation and presses on to advance deeper into the labyrinth. The focus then shifts to Cyan, who feels confident because his mother gave him and his sister a map of the labyrinth. He quickly spots a trap, activates it, and moves forward without issue. Now, they observe Ciel, who is fighting a goblin. The goblin attacks rapidly, but Ciel skillfully dodges every strike. With precision, she pierces the goblin's head with her sword. Afterward, she moves forward, only to find a dead end. Realizing her mistake, she decides to return to the last intersection. The screen now shows Iode, who is also engaged with a goblin. He appears stunned, unable to believe that magic can create such illusions. However, when the goblin attacks, he snaps back into focus. He manages to defend himself and then cuts the goblin's neck with a swift move. As the goblin dissolves into magic particles, Iode is amazed by the spectacle. This reaction piques Loberian's curiosity, and he wonders aloud if Iode is interested in magic. Gillite confirms that Iode has shown this fascination since he was a baby. They even hired a magic teacher, but Iode refused to continue his lessons. Loberian asks why, and Gillite explains that Iode believes he must become the next head of the family for his mother. Since magic is not highly valued within the family, Iode gave it up. Gillite then tells Loberian that if Iode still has an interest in magic, he wouldn't refuse the opportunity to become the disciple of the Red Tower Master. Loberian, however, doesn't make any promises. He will assess Iode's potential, but if he's not satisfied, he won't take him on as an apprentice. Gillite assures Loberian that he doesn't want to force anything. He just wants his son to follow his dreams. He mentions that instead of revering the family ancestor Vermouth, Iode idolizes the wise Sienna. Loberian agrees with this, recalling the old stories of Sienna's ability to create new spells when her party was in dire need. Gillite admits that he too has read those stories, but his favorite character was neither Vermouth nor Sienna. Before he can reveal who it was, he points to one of the screens, urging Loberian to look. The focus shifts to Eugene. He's standing in front of a massive troll, which begins launching powerful strikes at him. Eugene uses his shield to deflect the attacks and, in a surprising display of speed, slashes the troll with precision. Both Loberian and Gillite are astonished by the display. Gillite, watching the scene, can only mutter, "Amazing," as Eugene finishes the fight. The troll's massive corpse crashes to the floor, shaking the ground beneath him. Eugene moves forward as the body of the troll disintegrates into magic particles. Gillite watches in astonishment, marveling at the fact that a 13-year-old boy was able to defeat such a formidable foe. Loberian wonders how it happened. The troll might have been there as a trap, but Eugene defeated it so easily, especially considering it was larger than a typical troll. Gillite speculates that Eugene must have a natural-born talent. Meanwhile, Gargus is struggling against his own troll. One of the troll's attacks sends the muscle-bound fighter flying backward. However, Gargus quickly recovers, leaping back at the monster. Using all his strength, he manages to slice through the troll's leg, causing the creature to collapse. Without hesitation, Gargus jumps at the troll's head, delivering a powerful strike that pierces through its skull. To ensure the troll is fully defeated, Gargus slices at different parts of the monster's body. Finally, the troll lies motionless on the ground, and Gargus lets out a victorious roar. Despite his triumph, his injuries are severe, and his body gives out. He collapses unconscious on the ground as he attempts to move deeper into the labyrinth. In another part of the labyrinth, Cyan encounters a troll, but he quickly deduces that it's likely a trap rather than a real monster. He prepares a plan and throws a rock away from his position, causing the troll to turn and investigate the noise. Seizing the opportunity, Cyan moves forward, avoiding the confrontation altogether. Ahead, Cyan meets Seal, who is surprised to see her brother, especially since they had started in different sections. Confident in his memory of the labyrinth's map, Cyan tells Ciel to follow him so she doesn't get lost, and Ciel cheerfully agrees. Cyan sees this as a chance to redeem himself in his sister's eyes, especially after the humiliation he suffered earlier. Suddenly, Ciel asks if it's possible for any monsters to appear, since the labyrinth is supposed to be an illusion. Cyan responds, dismissing her question as obvious, but Ciel suggests that even a ghost could appear. Cyan freezes, visibly shaken by the idea of a ghost, though he tries to brush it off. Ciel notices his reaction and releases a soft laugh. Just then, a hand emerges from the darkness, followed by a bloody figure. Cyan yells in fear, but the figure screams in return, revealing that it's only Desira covered in wounds. Cyan demands an explanation, accusing her of trying to ambush him after scaring him with her appearance. Internally, Desira considers her first attempt to surprise them a failure, and she quickly moves on to her next plan. She starts running, leaving Cyan confused and surprised. However, Ciel reminds her brother that they shouldn't allow Desira to surpass them, and the two give chase. Desira realizes that she stands no chance in a 2-on-1 confrontation, and in frustration she wonders aloud where Gargus is. At that moment, she steps on a trap, causing the floor to collapse beneath her. Desera barely manages to jump across the hole and continues her dash toward the center of the labyrinth. Noticing the wide gap, Cyan decides to activate his mana, even though he had been saving this technique for the final boss. Running at full speed, he leaps over the hole and lands on the other side. He then calls to his sister, telling her to jump, assuring her that he'll catch her. However, Ciel, confident in her own abilities, effortlessly crosses the gap on her own. Cyan feels a sense of pride in his sister's skill, though it's tempered by a hint of surprise. The two continue chasing Desira, eventually reaching the labyrinth's central chamber, where they find a giant minotaur resting. The sight leaves them speechless, their faces displaying sheer amazement. Just then, a voice calls from behind, and they turn to see Eugene tired of waiting. Eugene casually asks why they all arrived at the same time. Cyan, surprised, asks what Eugene is doing there. Eugene replies that he's simply been waiting. He explains that he hasn't started the fight yet because he wanted to see who would arrive first. Desira, upon seeing Eugene waiting for them at the center of the labyrinth, assumed that he had accepted the proposal to team up against the boss. However, he barely remembered the conversation. His real motive was to yield the spot to them. With a smirk, he stated that he could defeat the boss alone, but that would be rather sad, considering how much they had struggled to get there. Cyan grew angry, demanding that he repeat himself. Eugene continued, explaining that the boss wouldn't attack them as long as they kept a certain distance. The plan was for each of them to fight the boss alone, in the order they arrived after him. Desira grew uneasy since she wasn't expecting to fight alone, but Eugene reassured her, saying that she could give up if she wanted, especially since she looked injured after her ordeal in the labyrinth. She angrily retorted that she wouldn't back down while grabbing a handkerchief. Tying it around her forehead to cover her wound, she approached the boss, spear raised, ready to fight. Cyan turned to Eugene and asked if he was going to fight, to which he replied that he would go after they were done. Cyan scoffed, mocking him and wondering if Eugene would even get a turn, since he would be the one to defeat the boss. Eugene decided to make a bet, declaring that if Cyan defeated the boss, he would call him elder brother for the rest of his life. Cyan's eyes lit up with excitement, telling Eugene he had better not forget those words. Cyan and Ciel sat down, observing the monster boss they would soon have to face. Desira finally stepped into the Minotaur's range, causing it to awaken, revealing its true, massive size. Desira felt a surge of fear, realizing she would have to take down that monstrous being alone. But she quickly steeled herself. There was no time to hesitate. She lunged at the beast and it immediately reacted, slamming the floor with one massive hand. Desira leaped into the air to evade the impact, quickly recovering before launching another attack. Finally, her spear struck its target. However, to her dismay, the Minotaur's skin was so tough that the attack failed to leave a single wound. The Minotaur took advantage of her momentary shock, its other hand swinging from behind and seizing her. Unable to move, she closed her eyes, certain that this was the end. But instead of finishing her off, the Minotaur simply hurled her back toward the entrance of the central room. Ciel turned to Eugene and asked what kind of monster would spare its prey instead of finishing the job. Eugene replied that it only happened because it wasn't a real monster. The victor had already been decided the moment the Minotaur grabbed her. Cyan, now brimming with excitement, gripped his sword and prepared for his turn. With a smirk, he glanced at Eugene and declared that he would now show them the difference between the power of the main bloodline and that of the collateral lines. He began charging his mana, a blue aura enveloping him as he focused. Finally, the energy imbued his sword, giving it a bluish glow. Desira's eyes widened in astonishment. "That's sword ki," she exclaimed, adding that such a technique required at least 10 years of mana training to achieve. Watching him, she felt a wave of frustration, realizing just how vast the gap was between them and the main bloodline. Even Eugene was taken aback, not expecting someone so young to wield sword ki. Cyan knew he could only maintain the technique for a short time, but it would be more than enough to defeat the boss. Suddenly, the mana in his sword dissipated, leaving him in stunned silence. At that moment, Eugene recalled Galate's words. This ritual was meant to test everyone's abilities without distinguishing between main and collateral lines. It now made sense. This central room must have been designed to prevent mana usage, likely due to Liberian's magic. Everything clicked. If mana couldn't be used, then everyone was forced to fight under equal conditions. Cyan, still frustrated, demanded to know why his sword key had disappeared, despite having plenty of mana left. Eugene raised his voice, telling him to step back if he thought he would lose. There was no point in getting injured out of sheer stubbornness. Ashamed, Cyan glanced at Eugene, who smirked as he stood beside Ciel, who looked eager to see her brother's match. Cyan's anger flared. How dare Eugene assume that he couldn't fight just because he couldn't use sword key? In an instant, he lunged at the monster, ready for his turn. The Minotaur, now fully awake, prepared for its second battle. The monster doesn't hesitate and launches its hand towards Cyan. He swiftly dodges the impact and seizes the opportunity to make a cut on the creature's arm. He keeps moving, landing slashes all over the monster's limbs. However, exhaustion sets in, and he realizes that minor wounds won't be enough to bring down the Minotaur. Determined to change his approach, he rushes toward the beast's legs. But just as he is about to strike, the monster abruptly lowers its knee, blocking Cyan's attack with surprising speed. Frustration and disbelief flash across his face. He hadn't expected such agility. In an instant, the Minotaur snatches Cyan and hurls him towards the exit. Though he manages to recover midair, he ends up outside the monster's range. Eugene informs him that his turn is over. He then turns to Seal, telling her she's up next. She refuses, explaining that she won't be able to use Sword Key in the battle. Eugene is momentarily taken aback, realizing that Ciel is more perceptive than her older brother. Without hesitation, Eugene readies himself, picking up his sword and shield. As he approaches the monster, Ciel asks if he truly believes he can win. Without shifting his focus from the beast, he declares that losing is not an option. Upon entering the creature's range, it unleashes a powerful punch, but Eugene effortlessly evades it. Seizing the opening, he leaps onto the monster's arm, aiming for its head. However, the beast swiftly counters with its other hand. Eugene dodges again, maneuvering skillfully until he reaches the Minotaur's head. The monster throws another punch, but Eugene jumps off at the last moment, causing the creature to strike itself. Letting out a pained roar, it momentarily exposes its neck, an opportunity Eugene does not waste. With calculated precision, he begins slashing at the vulnerable spot. The other three children watch in stunned silence. Desira quickly realizes that Eugene is targeting the carotid artery. With a final, decisive strike, Eugene pierces the monster's neck, ending its life. The massive corpse collapses, shaking the ground beneath them. Eugene nonchalantly cleans his blade, treating the battle as if it were just another training session. With a smirk, he asks if everyone witnessed him defeating the boss. Cyan, trying to justify his failure, blames his inability to use Sword Key. Yet, deep down, he isn't sure he could have achieved victory with such speed and elegance, even if he had been able to wield it. An unfamiliar emotion stirs within him. His excitement refuses to fade. His chest swells with admiration for Eugene, though he does not yet recognize the feeling. Suddenly, Eugene's weapons and the Minotaur's remains begin to dissolve into magical particles, signaling the end of the ceremony. In the observation tent, Gilite is thrilled to witness a child from the collateral line defeat a Minotaur with such mastery. Loberian agrees, noting that battling a Minotaur alone is an immense challenge. Hence, he had emphasized teamwork. His initial plan was to observe the children combining their strengths to take down the boss through various tactics. Curious, Loberian asks what kind of child Eugene is. How did he overcome every trap and defeat the final foe with such ease? Gilite explains that Eugene has dedicated himself solely to training since arriving at the mansion. He even had people investigate Eugene's hometown, where his relentless perseverance was evident. Continuing, Gilite remarks that Eugene was born to fight, and discovering such a talent through this ceremony is extraordinary. Loberian, his expression clouded with concern, asks if Gilite is not troubled by this revelation. After all, Eugene has already surpassed the three children of the main line, and once he learns to wield mana, his strength will only grow. Unfazed, Gilite sees this as an opportunity to further elevate the Lionheart name. Still uneasy, Loberian presses on. What if Eugene decides to claim the position of the Lionheart family's next leader? Gilite responds with stoic resolve. The title belongs to the strongest among them. If his children cannot defend their birthright, then they are unfit to lead. Loberian advises him to consider adopting Eugene as his son. A collateral line child defeating the direct line in the blood continuation ceremony could spark disrespect among the other branches, leading to greater complications. Gilite acknowledges Loberian's advice, admitting that the suggestion is quite tempting. For now, however, their priority is to congratulate the children who are approaching as the maze vanishes. The kids are now assembled in front of Gilite and Loberian. Gilite, wearing a disappointed expression, directs his gaze at Iode. The boy couldn't even reach the center of the maze due to being sidetracked by the magic and creatures. The blood continuation ceremony is meant to be a trial where they prove themselves, not an excuse to be consumed by curiosity. On the other hand, Ciel and Cyan managed to surpass the traps and monsters without much difficulty. They were unable to defeat the boss, but with further training they will be able to overcome their lack of experience. Gilite acknowledges their efforts, stating that he observed their performance and that they did an excellent job. He then calls Eugene and declares that he was the most outstanding among the 9 children. He continues, praising Eugene's techniques, especially his ease in defeating the troll. This remark sparks Gargus's curiosity as he struggles to understand how Eugene managed such a feat with his seemingly frail body. Lobarian admits that he expected them to spend 2 or 3 days wandering in the maze, but had clearly underestimated them. Internally, he reflects that, despite being children, they are still descendants of the Great Vermouth. Gilate instructs them to return and rest, as he plans to hold a banquet. However, he confesses that he hadn't prepared it beforehand, not expecting them to emerge so quickly. Thus, the banquet will take place the following day, and for now, he tells Lobarian to escort the children back. As they are leaving, Gilate suddenly calls Eugene and asks him to accompany him. Ciel is taken aback and questions whether her father is giving Eugene his present at that moment. Gilate confirms, saying there is no reason to postpone it. Ciel looks disappointed. She has repeatedly asked her father to let her see the treasure chamber, yet he has never allowed it. While walking through the forest, Gilate comments on Eugene's proficiency with various weapons. He mentions his exceptional performance with a sword and shield against the monsters and his adept use of the spear against Desera. Eugene is surprised that he knew about his fight with Desera, but it is to be expected, considering he is the head of the family. Gilate explains that while the sword is the family symbol, Vermouth himself was skilled with all kinds of weapons, which is why he was called the God of War. He adds that, aside from Vermouth, only one other person had mastered every weapon, Hamel, who was second only to Vermouth. He then states that he actually preferred Hamel over Vermouth. Eugene is surprised and asks why. Gilate responds that he admired Hamel's human qualities more than Vermouth's godlike presence. Hamel recognized his inferiority compared to Vermouth, yet instead of surrendering to despair, he trained relentlessly, pushing beyond his limits, and in the end, he sacrificed his life for his companions. Eugene smiles, saying that he also liked Hamel. They finally arrive at the treasure chamber. As they descend the stairs, Gilate notes that Eugene is the first person to enter without being the head of the family. Eugene asks what is stored within the chamber. Gilate answers that it holds the inheritances accumulated over hundreds of years, along with the belongings of the Great Vermouth. Eugene then inquires whether the Holy Sword is kept there as well. Gilate confirms but clarifies that Eugene will not be able to claim it. First, because the sword is a symbol of the family and cannot belong to a single individual. And second, because the blade has never acknowledged anyone other than Vermouth. Eugene doesn't fully understand what he means by acknowledged, but Gilate tells him that everything will become clear once he sees it for himself. They finally reach the entrance. Gilate bites his finger, and with a single drop of his blood, the door unlocks. He invites Eugene inside, and the boy asks if he is not going with him. Gilate replies that he will wait outside, as he does not wish to influence Eugene's decision. Eugene thanks him and steps into the chamber. The door closes behind him, and his eyes immediately land on the holy sword resting on its pedestal. With a smirk, he decides to try picking it up first. The holy sword is a weapon that has existed since the foundation of the Eurus Empire. Legend says it was a gift from God. It remained sealed in the central temple until it acknowledged Vermouth as its master. 3 centuries ago, it pierced the demon king of slaughter. However, after that, it was used merely as a torch. Eugene bends down to pick up the legendary weapon. He grasps the hilt and pulls with all his strength. However, it doesn't budge. He concludes that even if he could lift it, he wouldn't be able to keep it, so it's better to look for something else. As he walks through the chamber's aisles, he comes across Aspel, the Sword of Gluttony, a weapon capable of cutting through mana and absorbing it to strengthen itself. He examines it, but remembers that Vermouth could wield it effectively because he was an exceptional magician. For now, it's too advanced for him to handle. He continues searching and spots Kabos, the draconian spear, which can unleash a dragon's breath. Nearby, he notices Winneth, the Stormblade, a sword blessed by the king of wind elementals. There are so many remarkable weapons that he wouldn't regret taking any of them. However, he soon realizes that some notable weapons, such as the Moonlight Sword and the Demon Spear, are missing. Frustration builds within him, suspecting that others have already claimed the most valuable relics. As he weighs his best option, he considers Winneth. With that sword, the wielder can command wind elementals, and with enough mana, even summon the Wind Elemental King. However, elemental magic is complex, even for gifted sorcerers. For that reason, Eugene decides to keep searching the vault. He steps into an area filled with accessories, but something immediately catches his attention. Among the artifacts, he finds an old necklace, the same one he wore as Hamel in his past life. That necklace belonged to his parents, who were devoured by a monster, but later avenged. From that moment on, he wore it until his dying breath. He wonders how it ended up in the chamber, suspecting that Vermouth took his body home. This triggers a memory. Vermouth and the Demon King of Incarceration made a pact to bring peace, leaving two Demon Kings and their domains untouched. Eugene recalls the conversations he had with his comrades about defeating all 5 Demon Kings. Now he questions what kind of agreement was made while his necklace was left behind in this chamber. He assumes they must have compromised due to their lack of power after his death. Although he wishes not to resent his comrades, he is certain there must have been a compelling reason why they couldn't eliminate the remaining Demon Kings. The chamber holds extraordinary weapons, but he refuses to leave the necklace behind. Upon exiting, Gilite is surprised by Eugene's choice. Eugene simply states that he picked something he liked. Still doubtful, Gilite remarks that the chamber is filled with incredible treasures. Eugene responds that he isn't ready to wield those weapons yet. Gilite then asks to inspect the necklace. After examining it, he sees no value in the gem or craftsmanship. It's just a cheap trinket with no place in the vault. To confirm, he places it in front of the chamber's keyhole. The lock glows red, signifying that the necklace is not registered as a Lionheart treasure. Perplexed, Gilite informs Eugene that the item doesn't belong inside the vault, yet Eugene insists he found it there. Still puzzled, Gilite questions if Eugene is certain about his choice, pointing out that even if he sold the necklace, it wouldn't fetch enough to buy a basic sword. Without hesitation, Eugene reaffirms his decision. Acknowledging his resolve, Gilite agrees, but decides to take the necklace to Liberian for appraisal, suspecting it might be enchanted. He remains surprised by the situation, and notes that since the necklace technically isn't a Lionheart treasure, Eugene is allowed to pick something else from the chamber. Grateful, Eugene thanks him and dashes back inside. He still can't believe one of Vermouth's descendants is surprisingly reasonable and sensible. This time, Eugene moves with certainty. Without hesitation, he strides toward Wyneth, the Stormblade, unsheathes it, and declares that it is now his. Back at the mansion, Desira is yelling at Eugene, demanding to know why he didn't pick up a spear if he's proficient with it. Eugene responds that it was his decision and that he's also skilled with a sword. Gargus remarks that the blade looks very light. A hammer or an axe would have been a much better choice, but Eugene repeats that it was his choice. Striking an odd pose, Gargi offers to take him to his family to get some muscle-enhancing medicine, but Eugene declines without hesitation. Desira tells him to ignore the muscle head and asks him to draw his sword. She inquires about its nature, and Eugene answers that it is the Stormblade Wyneth, a weapon imbued with the blessing of the Elemental King of Wind, which can be summoned with sufficient mana training. Desira admits that it is impressive but insists that a spear would have been better. Eugene mentions that he saw plenty of spears inside the vault, which instantly excites her. She eagerly asks if he came across the draconian spear Carbos, capable of unleashing dragon's breath with every thrust, or the demon spear Ruintis, the most formidable weapon in Vermouth's arsenal. Gargus joins the conversation, explaining that Ruintis was once wielded by the Demon King of Brutality. 3 centuries ago, in the Devildom of Helmuth, there were 5 Demon Kings. The first ranked was the Demon King of Apocalypse. Second was the Demon King of Incarceration. Third, the Demon King of Frenzy. Fourth, the Demon King of Brutality. And fifth, the Demon King of Slaughter. Gargius continues, correcting Desira, stating that the strongest weapon in Vermouth's collection was actually the destructive crusher Gigolus. The two begin arguing over which weapon is superior, while Eugene recalls that the crusher was also absent from the chamber. Ruintis and Gigolus were once wielded by demon kings. Such ominous artifacts were likely sealed away elsewhere. Growing weary of their childish bickering, Eugene departs, pondering which of the two might be superior. However, there is no debate regarding the mightiest weapon in Vermouth's possession. The Moonlight Sword, destruction given form in the shape of a blade, remains sealed in the depths of Helmuth. Long ago, Vermouth wielded it to annihilate both the Demon King of Brutality and the Demon King of Slaughter. Eugene stands with Wyneth drawn, feeling a rush of exhilaration as he grips a genuine sword for the first time in this life. He begins swinging the blade, catching Desira and Gargus's attention. His movements flow with elegance, leaving a luminous blue trail in their wake. The two watch, captivated by the breathtaking swordplay on display. Meanwhile, inside the mansion's office, Liberian is scrutinizing the necklace. He concludes that there is no trace of magic on it. Seeking confirmation about where it was discovered, he asks Gilate, who affirms without a doubt that it was found inside the vault. Liberian wonders if the boy was attempting some kind of deception, but Gilate dismisses the idea, asserting there was no reason for such a ploy. If he had not allowed Eugene to retrieve another artifact from the vault, the boy would have left empty-handed. Liberian agrees that it would have been an extremely reckless gamble. Although the necklace contains no magic, Liberian decides to investigate further. There exists a spell, devised by the wise Sienna, that enables one to read the lingering memories within mana. Since mana is omnipresent, some objects absorb it over time, allowing their history to be unveiled through the technique. Concentrating his mana on the necklace, Lobarian experiences a rush of visions peering into the past. He manages to glimpse a moment from 100 years ago when the necklace was originally purchased. Unfortunately, he is unable to extract any valuable information, likely due to the mana being distorted by its prolonged storage within the vault. Gillite takes hold of the necklace, remarking that no one alive could possibly recognize it after all these years. Lobarian asks what he intends to do with it. Gillite responds that he will return it to Eugene, since the boy desired it enough to forgo a priceless treasure. Lobarian notices that Gillite has developed a fondness for Eugene. Gillite rises to his feet, gazing at Eugene as he skillfully wields his blade, and admits that it is rather obvious. At that moment, he makes up his mind. He will extend the offer. Lobarian seeks confirmation, wanting to be certain that they are thinking the same thing. Gillite nods, affirming his decision. He will adopt Eugene Lionheart as his son. The following day, Jian arrives and greets Eugene with a cheerful tone, startling Nina. To Eugene, Jian is an oddball. Despite being Gillite Lionheart's youngest brother, he never married. Eugene introduces himself politely, but Jian waves it off, saying he already knows who he is. He grabs Eugene and congratulates him for being the collateral child who triumphed over the main line in the bloodline continuation ceremony. Shrugging off his grip, Eugene asks if he has come to take him away. Jian confirms, explaining that Gillite originally planned to send another knight, but he volunteered instead. He wanted to meet the prodigy in person. He continues, saying that he has heard a lot about Eugene but didn't get the chance to witness his skills during the ceremony. That was due to the family tradition, allowing only the patriarch to observe the event. However, this time was an exception since Lobarian was there to assist. Jian quickly clarifies that he holds no resentment towards his brother or the custom. He doesn't want to sound as if he is dissatisfied with the family's rules. Eugene responds that he doesn't care about it, to which Jian remarks that his brother wouldn't either. Eugene notes that Jian's personality reflects his free spirit, which might explain why he never married. As they walk through a corridor of the mansion, Eugene asks why the head of the family has summoned him, but Jian is unsure. He suggests it might simply be to congratulate him. Eugene points out that he has already received enough praise, and Jian admits he doesn't know the reason either. He shrugs, saying he has no clue but doesn't particularly care. He adds that it will be great to see Eugene more often. He knocks on the door, and Gillite grants him permission to enter. Jian helps open it, but before leaving, playfully winks at Eugene, making him uncomfortable with his overbearing personality. Gillite welcomes him, apologizing for the sudden summons and offering him a seat. Once they are both seated, Gillite begins by addressing the necklace Eugene took from the vault. He informs him that Lobarian appraised it, but it turned out to be nothing more than an ordinary trinket. He goes on to say that they even used mana memory reading on it but found nothing significant. Eugene is taken aback upon hearing that they employed the memory of mana, a technique developed long ago by Sienna. Nervously, he asks what they discovered. Gillite explains that the necklace was originally purchased on the streets of the capital a century ago. Eugene's thoughts race. There's no way that could be true. He is absolutely certain it is the same necklace he possessed 300 years ago. There's no way he could be mistaken. Lobarian has no reason to lie, but did he really read the mana memory correctly? Eugene considers the possibility that an advanced spell, perhaps one at the level of a Tower Master, was used to overwrite the original mana memory. He can't fathom why someone would go to such lengths, but he decides not to dwell on it. Putting on a cheerful facade, he asks Gillite if he can keep the necklace. Gillite nods, affirming that he intends to keep his promise. Eugene gladly takes the necklace and puts it on without hesitation. Switching topics, Gillite states that there was another reason he called him. He admits it might seem sudden, but assures Eugene that it's an excellent opportunity for his future. Just as Gillite is about to elaborate, Eugene interrupts. He says that while CL is kind and adorable, it's far too early for him to consider marriage. Now, everything makes sense. CL's joyful and friendly demeanor around him must have been part of an elaborate setup for a political marriage. Eugene had regarded Gillite as a decent man, and didn't expect such a scheme brewing in the background. Feeling nervous, he insists that he's too young to think about marriage and doesn't even have his father's permission. But before he can continue, Gillite cuts him off. He calmly states that he never intended for Eugene to marry CL. Eugene freezes in shock, his face flushing red in an instant. He had completely misunderstood the situation. Now he wants to hit his head against a wall for even entertaining the thought of marrying a 13-year-old. Gillite finally reveals his true intention. He wants to adopt Eugene as his son. Eugene is momentarily speechless. It's an unexpected proposal, but at the same time, it offers a solid path to joining the main line. He acknowledges that the offer is abrupt, but Gilite counters that it's not as sudden as a marriage proposal. Furthermore, he adds that he is willing to incorporate Gerhard, Eugene's father, into the main line as well. Uncertain, Eugene remarks that this would mean he'd have two fathers. Gilite, however, dismisses the concern, explaining that it's simply a way for him to become part of the main bloodline. He reassures Eugene, stating that he has no intention of taking him away from his father. In fact, he promises to respect Gerhard as if he were his own brother. Nervously, Eugene asks if refusing to become his son would make Gilite lose respect for his father. Gilite assures him that won't be the case. After all, he is not a petty person. He will respect Eugene's decision and wish him the best for his future. Eugene states that he needs to discuss it with his father since he can't make such a choice alone. Gilite is fine with that and suggests they decide after the banquet. For now, he'll send someone to fetch Eugene's father. Eugene suddenly asks what he meant when he said this decision would be good for his future. Gilite explains that growing up within the main family has its advantages. First, he will have many skilled knights at his disposal to train him. A bright smile appears on Eugene's face. He expresses his desire to learn from the strongest and asks Gilite if he could personally teach him. He agrees, but admits that if Eugene truly wants to learn from the best, Jian is the right person since he surpassed him long ago. Eugene finds it hard to believe that Jian is actually the strongest among them. Then, Gilite inquires if his father taught him how to use mana. Eugene replies that he was told it was forbidden to learn about it yet. Apparently, the primary source of mana comes from the mana stones hidden within high-ranked monsters. The more efficient the mana stone, the harder it is to obtain, and to use them properly, one needs an exceptional mentor. Unfortunately, the place where Eugene grew up was not ideal for nurturing his talent. Gilite is aware of all this, but refrains from saying it aloud to avoid creating resentment. After their conversation, Eugene stands up and thanks him for everything. Gilite offers to have someone escort him back, but he politely declines, saying that the separate building is not far, and he'll go alone. As he leaves the mansion, a perfume scent lingers in the air. He senses that someone is hiding around the corner. Since the individual remains motionless, he assumes they must be waiting for him. He keeps walking, and suddenly Anasilia appears, feigning surprise at the encounter. Eugene is aware of her act, but he knows the best approach is to adhere to formalities. He bows and introduces himself. She comments that she noticed him talking with the head of the family for a long time. Eugene asks if she has something to say. Internally, she seethes at his audacity, but she's not surprised. He is the country boy who not only defeated a member of the main family, but also won the bloodline continuation ritual. She knows Eugene will grow even stronger in the future, so it is better to maintain a friendly facade. She even admits that she instructed Ciel to stay close to him to bind him through a political marriage. She continues, asking what he discussed with the family head. He replies that it wouldn't be appropriate to disclose a private conversation with Gilite. Anasilia grows nervous and agrees, adding that she has another topic to discuss. She apologizes for Cyan's disrespectful behavior a few days ago, explaining that she had no time to address it due to the ritual. With a stoic expression, Eugene replies that an apology is unnecessary since the issue was already settled with Cyan. She commends him for being so mature and magnanimous at his age. Finally, she states that she will give Cyan a stern warning and hopes they get along. Smiling, Eugene assures her they will. After all, they are family. Anasilia's anger flares at hearing the word family. He is right, but hearing it from Eugene unsettles her. He asks if he may leave, and Anasilia apologizes for delaying him, advising him to rest. As Eugene departs, he wonders if she has opposed him from the start, simply because he belongs to the Branch family. He decides it would be best to avoid entanglements with her. 2 days have passed since Gilite and Eugene discussed the adoption. A carriage arrives at the mansion, transporting Eugene's father, who is being escorted by Jian. In his mind, Gerhard still can't process the fact that Eugene won the blood continuation ritual. He starts feeling guilty for his son. Eugene displayed talent from an early age, but Gerhard lacked the ability to nurture his potential. When Eugene left, he assumed the children of the main family would prove that the gap between them couldn't be bridged by mere talent and effort. Suddenly, Eugene calls out to him, snapping him out of his melancholic thoughts. Gerhard rushes toward his son and embraces him with deep affection. Tears stream down his face as he tells Eugene how proud he is and how much joy he brings him as his child. Eugene reminds him that before leaving, he promised to bring good news and assured him there was no reason to worry. Gerhard continues crying and apologizes for doubting his words. Suddenly, Gerhard notices Gilite and quickly wipes his tears. He bows, introducing himself to the head of the family, and Gilite reciprocates with a nod, adding an apology for the abrupt summons. Not wanting to take his time with his son, Gillite requests him to have a private conversation inside the mansion. Gerhard agrees with a smile, and the two head inside while Eugene remains outside. Inside, Gerhard finds it hard to believe that Gillite is serious about adopting Eugene. Gillite reaffirms his intention. He explains that if Eugene becomes his son, he will automatically be part of the main family. Gerhard rises from his seat and prefaces his next words with an apology in case they come off as disrespectful. He expresses his love for his son and his concerns about Eugene's future. Gillite prompts him to elaborate. Gerhard acknowledges the head of the family's good intentions but points out the possibility that Eugene might face hostility from other members of the main family. After all, Gillite already has 3 children, and Eugene would be perceived as an outsider. Gillite understands completely. He has no desire to restrict Eugene's future, but he is aware that the main family might not accept him due to their strict views on bloodline legitimacy. He further clarifies that even if Eugene joins the main family, he won't be eligible for the head position. However, if Eugene can set that aside, his talent may flourish under their wing. As his son, Eugene would grow closer to his 3 children, paving the way for a brighter future. Gerhard acknowledges that it is a reasonable proposal but insists on discussing it with his son before making a decision. Outside, Eugene is practicing with his sword. His father approaches hesitantly. From his father's demeanor, Eugene deduces that he must be overwhelmed by the prospect of the adoption. As Gerhard nears, Eugene directly questions him about his expression. Gerhard's gaze shifts to Eugene's side, recognizing the legendary sword his son obtained from the family's treasure chamber. He knows that even if he were to sell all his possessions, he could never afford such a weapon. At last, Gerhard speaks, revealing that the head of the family wishes to adopt him. He adds that he too wants Eugene to become Gillite's son to secure a better future. However, Gerhard is also aware that adoption could bring hardships for his son. Eugene reassures him, stating that he understands the challenges ahead, but by now, his father should know that he won't let anyone stand in his way. Tears well up in Gerhard's eyes as he pulls Eugene into an embrace, reminding him never to forget that he was named by both his father and his late mother. Eugene promises that even after the adoption, Gerhard will always be his true father. His father weeps and holds him tightly, grateful to have him as his son. During the embrace, Eugene contemplates how much he stands to gain from the adoption, though the process itself is troublesome for him. He has no desire to become the family head, but he knows few would believe that. He is certain that Gillite's 2 wives will keep him under scrutiny. As he bids farewell to his father, Eugene reflects that there are only 2 ways to handle hostility: either ignore it or crush it outright. Sometime later, Gillite invited all the families of the children who participated in the bloodline continuation ritual to a banquet to celebrate the triumph of the branch families. Gerhard is at the banquet when suddenly someone calls him. They are the parents of Desira and Gargus, both of whom commend him for having an outstanding son and for joining the main household. They form a group to get to know each other while Eugene observes from a distance. He is certain that all the attention will become bothersome and also immediately recognizes Gargus's father by his demeanor. On one side of the room, Anasilia and Cyan are watching the gathering, but Cyan looks ashamed. Anasilia tells him to be confident. From that day forward, he will be compared to Eugene. Every time they see him, they will recall his defeat against Eugene and will mock him for failing to win as a member of the direct bloodline for the first time in history. She tells her son to embrace the humiliation, but he must not lose hope. After all, he still belongs to the Lionheart's direct lineage. While holding him, she says that Eugene cannot become head of the family, yet he still has many disadvantages, so Cyan must try even harder to rise as the patriarch. She adds that he must befriend Eugene and foster a brotherly relationship so that he can become his ally in the future. Cyan agrees, though he remains uncertain about how to approach him. On the other side, Ciel is already conversing with Eugene, surprised to learn that they are now siblings. She asks him to call her big sister, but Eugene refuses. After all, she is only a few months older. Ciel looks displeased at being the younger sibling just because Cyan was born 5 seconds earlier. Eugene keeps walking, uninterested in her words, but Ciel insists on being addressed as an older sister over and over again. Eugene thinks he would rather die than call a 13-year-old kid his elder. Inside the mansion, Loberian states that he will not take Iode as his apprentice unconditionally. At the Red Tower, summoning magic is their specialty. Iode's abilities will first be tested in the city of Aroth. Iode asks what will happen if he proves to have an aptitude for summoning. Loberian replies that it would be beneficial, but his Lionheart name holds no weight in Aroth. So, unless he demonstrates talent beyond other mages, he will not consider him as his pupil. With a shamefaced expression, Iode accepts. However, since Lobarian and Gillite are longtime friends, he will have many chances to prove his potential. He adds that he will shield Iode from discrimination and assist him in finding the ideal environment for his magic. These words spark a glimmer of hope in Iode. Even if he does not become Lobarian's apprentice, he is happy because he will finally escape that suffocating household and study magic. He looks at his father, awaiting approval, but Gillite states that it is his and only his decision to make. Suddenly, his mother calls him, and with a menacing attitude, orders him to accept the opportunity his father is offering. After all, he has shown interest in magic rather than swordsmanship and spear combat since childhood. She holds him, and, exerting great pressure on her son, reminds him that he must become the patriarch and that even in Eroth he cannot forget this duty. Gillite scolds her for her behavior, but she justifies herself, saying that it is her way of motivating him. Internally, Theonis is certain that Anasilia must be elated about Iode leaving for Eroth, but she knows there is no alternative. Iode was not born with the talents of his bloodline, so his best option is to establish connections with other mages in order to strengthen his influence in Eroth and build relationships that will support him. Finally, Theonis reminds her son that he is the legitimate heir of Lionheart. Ashamed, Iode concedes to his mother's words. The day after the banquet, Lobarian departed with Iode, with Eroth as their destination. Additionally, the rest of the children returned home with their families. Since Gerhard and Eugene are now part of the main household, they will reside in the building where Eugene rested during the ritual. At last, the day arrives when Eugene starts his mana training for the first time since reincarnating. Mana cultivation is divided into breathing and body training. Breathing allows the user to absorb mana from the atmosphere while inhaling, whereas body training enables mana collection through physical movement. Both methods are challenging, but breathing is considered the superior approach. In his past life, Eugene utilized body training to harness mana, but later switched to breathing after Senya and Vermouth advised him to do so. In the Lionheart family, the technique practiced is breathing. He is walking in the forest, where Gion awaits him. Gion greets Eugene and instructs him to follow. They are heading toward a mana vein, a location where mana is highly concentrated. Deep within the forest lies a mana vein created by Vermouth, accessible only to members of the main bloodline. Gion asks if he is nervous, but Eugene admits that he is incredibly excited. Gion reassures him, saying that there is no need to worry since it is his first time attempting to sense mana. He informs Eugene that his siblings have trained since they were 6. Cyan and Ciel managed to perceive mana in 4 days, while Iode succeeded in a week. For children from collateral branches, it usually takes a month. However, Gion is confident that this will not be the case for Eugene, as he will train within the mana vein under his guidance. Eugene asks how long it will take, and Gion estimates approximately 10 days. Eugene chuckles internally because he knows it will not even take 10 minutes. They continue walking through the forest until they arrive at an old cabin. They enter the cabin, which appears quite ordinary. Gion leads the way to a concealed underground entrance, guiding Eugene into an empty chamber with what seems to be a magic circle in the center, crafted from gold. Gion instructs him to sit in the middle. With Eugene positioned at the center, Gion begins explaining that he is about to teach him the mana training technique inherited from the Great Vermouth. This technique cannot be learned by the collateral family, so instead, they practice the Red Flame ritual, which is not as effective as the original. Gion prepares to demonstrate the authentic mana technique, which only the main bloodline is permitted to learn. He calls it the White Flame ritual, while a white aura envelops his body. Upon witnessing it, Eugene recalls seeing Vermouth use this form. Vermouth's dense mana would shroud his body, manifesting as white flames that, at times, resembled a lion's mane. In his past life, Eugene never understood the full extent of these flames' abilities, but this time is different. Gion ceases using the technique and instructs him to first focus on his breathing to begin sensing mana. Immediately, Eugene claims that he can already feel the mana surrounding him. Gion chuckles softly, saying that it is merely his imagination. He is likely forcing himself so much that he believes he perceives something. To prove his point, Gion conjures a small mana sphere, intending to demonstrate that Eugene's senses are deceiving him. He moves the sphere around Eugene, who has his eyes shut, expecting to confirm his assumption, but Eugene promptly states that he can detect mana shifting around him. He continuously points at the mana sphere, while Gion observes in disbelief. Tired of this game, Eugene asks how long he intends to continue. Gion is astonished. He had assumed that even 10 days to sense mana would be remarkably fast, yet Eugene has already surpassed his expectations. Gion sits in front of him, acknowledging that the true training can now begin since Eugene can already perceive mana. From this point forward, He must concentrate on what is happening inside his body. Jian instructs him to breathe slowly. He must visualize himself inhaling the flow of mana with each breath. Once the mana is inside his body, he must guide it toward his heart. Gradually, Jian steps back, commending Eugene for his progress. Eugene already has a thin layer of mana enveloping his body. Jian can hardly believe it. How is he already attuning to the mana within him? At this stage, he only needs to allow the mana to be fully assimilated into his body. Internally, Eugene is equally astounded. Although training with mana was not difficult in his previous life, his new body is exceptionally adept at absorbing mana, to the extent that his reserves expand continuously with every breath. However, his body is still young, and he quickly reaches the maximum amount of mana he can currently contain. Sensing Eugene's mana core, Jian is amazed. It is astonishingly potent. Normally, a mana core starts off minuscule and expands gradually through training. Jian calls him a monster while extending his hand. Eugene responds with a handshake, asking if that was meant as a compliment, to which Jian confirms. After training, they start walking home. Along the way, Jian explains that the key distinction between the red and white flame rituals lies in the method of dividing the mana core. The red flame technique only permits a single core. With the white flame technique, however, the mana core naturally splits upon surpassing a certain threshold in training. This allows mana to be stored more efficiently within the body, while simultaneously enabling each core to reinforce the others, amplifying their strength. These divided cores are referred to as stars. The Great Vermouth had 10 stars when using this technique, and to this day, he remains the only one to have reached that level. Jian mentions that he and Gillite each have 6 stars, while his brother's children have only 1. However, he believes that Ciel and Cyan will achieve their 2nd star within a year. They started training at 6, so it has taken the twins 8 years to progress from 1 to 2 stars. With curiosity, Eugene asks how long it would take him. Jian is confident it will be much shorter, provided he remains diligent in his training. Eugene cheerfully declares that he will do his best, but inwardly, he is amused. His new body is far superior to his previous one, and now he is learning Vermouth's techniques. Still, he is uncertain whether he will be able to reach 10 stars like his old friend. First, he needs more knowledge about the white flame technique to tailor it to his needs. He silently thanks Vermouth for passing down this technique to his descendants, as it grants him the opportunity to accomplish extraordinary feats. Upon arriving at the mansion, Jian states that he will speak with Gillite about Eugene's progress. He advises Eugene to rest for now. Finally, Jian departs. Yet, overwhelmed with excitement, Eugene cannot even consider resting. There is something he must attempt. Suddenly, Nina notices Eugene and is surprised that he has returned so soon. Eugene immediately orders her to fetch Wynneth, his wind sword. He grips it, wondering if what he is about to attempt will even succeed. He begins infusing the sword with his mana, and out of nowhere, a powerful whirlwind engulfs him, startling Nina. Within the whirlwind, a voice greets Eugene, but it uses his real name, Hamel. Upon hearing it, Eugene immediately remembers. It is the voice of Tempest, the spirit king of wind. From the center of the whirlwind, Tempest asks Eugene if he has truly reincarnated. Eugene is in shock, wondering how the elemental king was able to recognize him. Tempest reveals that he couldn't possibly forget the soul of one of Vermouth's comrades, adding that no matter how much time passes, the soul does not change. It's been a while since someone has called him through Wynneth, and when checking who the sword wielder was, he felt Hamel's soul. Eugene abruptly changes the topic, demanding to know why Vermouth did not kill the remaining demon kings. He's sure that Tempest must know the answer. After all, Vermouth was still carrying Wynneth when they continued their journey after his death. Tempest says that he doesn't know what Vermouth intended, since in the battle against the demon king of incarceration, Vermouth sheathed his blade. He continues, saying that the fight against the demon king was fierce, but in the end, only Vermouth and the demon king of incarceration remained standing. For some reason, Vermouth sheathed his sword and decided not to kill the demon king of incarceration, nor go to the castle of the demon king of apocalypse. Eugene's expression fills with anger, and he proceeds to ask what deal Vermouth and the demon king of incarceration made. Tempest simply answers that he knows nothing about the agreement, making Eugene run out of patience. Tempest adds that only the ones who made the deal know its contents. The moment Vermouth sheathed his sword, he could no longer interfere. Eugene keeps boiling in anger, reminding Tempest with sarcasm that only Vermouth and the Demon King were conscious, so his only option is to ask Vermouth's corpse. Tempest ignores his rambling and mentions that, at Eugene's current level, he wouldn't have been able to summon him. He just wanted to see him, but now he must leave. Eugene demands the Elemental King to answer, as Tempest starts leaving, asking to be summoned again once Eugene becomes stronger. Eugene keeps yelling, but exhaustion takes over his body and he ends up collapsing on the floor, making Nina worried as she rushes to help her young master. Eugene now lays on his bed. He abruptly wakes up, feeling exhaustion all over his body. He suffered from mana depletion due to Tempest taking all the energy Eugene had in his reserve. He recalls a troubling thought. What if he wasn't Hamel's reincarnation and just someone with his memories overwritten by Hamel's? But after learning that elementals recognize people by their souls, now Eugene has no doubts that he's truly Hamel's reincarnation with memories from 300 years ago. Suddenly, Nina appears, surprised to see Eugene all right after passing out. She informs him that Gillite and Gion are in the mansion and she will bring them immediately. They finally arrive, and Gillite starts by saying that he has heard from Nina that a powerful whirlwind appeared when Eugene drew Wynneth. With curiosity, he asks if Eugene really attempted to call an elemental. Eugene thinks that more people have probably seen the storm and for now, he shouldn't reveal everything that occurred inside it. Eugene mentions that the elemental king of wind appeared, surprising both Gion and Gillite. Displaying an innocent smile, he continues, saying that the elemental king wanted to see who drew the sword since it's been a while since he had been summoned. Gion can't hide his expression of shock, revealing that the only one able to summon the elemental king of wind in the family was Vermouth. Eugene adds that the elemental king told him he wasn't strong enough but would be waiting for his call once Eugene grows up. Gillite starts laughing, surprising Gion, who must not be used to seeing his older brother that happy. Gillite compliments Eugene, mentioning that Gion told him about his proficiency at the mana vein, managing to sense mana immediately and even forming a core with the white flame method. That alone was impressive, but he still can't believe Eugene attracted the attention of the elemental king of wind. Gillite tells him to rest, and afterwards, Gion will continue training him. Eugene thanks him but says that he doesn't want to take more time away from them. Gion dismisses his worries. After all, he is eager to teach Eugene. He even adds that Cyan and Ciel will also train under his guidance. Upon hearing that, Gillite thinks about the twins. He hopes they can see Eugene as a source of inspiration to go even further. Outside, Ciel and Cyan are in the training field with their swords. Ciel mentions to her brother that Eugene's white flame method is already 1 star. She adds that for them it took an eternity to reach that level, which upsets Cyan, and he counters by saying that 1 month is actually one of the fastest times in the family. But inwardly, they can't shake the feeling that it's nothing compared to Eugene, who managed to get 1 star in a single day. They both rush against each other, swords drawn, and clash dramatically, trying to vent out any frustration they might have. Back inside Eugene's bedroom, he checks if nobody is around. He draws Wynneth and starts infusing it with mana, summoning a small wind spirit. It is a sylph, a low-level elemental and the only kind he can summon with his current mana. Eugene asks her if she knows anything about the elemental king of wind, to which the sylph remains silent, as if not understanding his words. Eugene gets frustrated and, with an angry expression, orders the elemental to tell her king that if he lied about anything, he'll take his life. The sylph changes her expression, clearly displeased with Eugene's words. She soars through the room and vanishes. Once more, Eugene thinks about what happened after he died in the castle of the Demon King of Incarceration. The details of the deal Vermouth and the Demon King made are only known by the two of them. If he wants more information, he's aware he'll have to venture to Helmuth, the realm of the Demon Kings. But beyond that, he'll also have to visit the kingdoms of Aroth, Eurus, and Luhar in order to learn what happened to his old comrades. But for now, he'll have to grow stronger since his current body wouldn't withstand a journey to distant lands. The story takes us 4 years into the future and now, Eugene Lionheart is 17 years old. He is looking at himself in the mirror, amazed by the physique of one of Vermouth's descendants. After all this time, he managed to reach the 3-star level in the White Flame method. Despite that, he still thinks it's not enough. If he truly wants to utilize his new body, he needs to go beyond what he learned in his previous life. Outside the mansion, Eugene talks about his intentions to go to Aroth and learn magic. Cyan listens to him, unsure of what exactly he's talking about. After their sparring, Eugene reveals that something happened when he trained with the flame method. His 3 stars start spinning, and his mana projects off his body, resembling a lion's mane, just like Vermouth's. Cyan looks astonished, unable to believe Eugene's current power. His frustration builds up, since Eugene was introduced to mana training 7 years later than him, and despite that, he has already reached the 3-star level while Cyan is still at 2 stars. Eugene stops his technique since he just wanted to show it off. Cyan is still angry, saying that he wants to kill him, but Eugene says that he can't do that since now they are brothers. Cyan changes the topic, asking about Eugene's sudden interest in magic. He even reminds him of what happened to Iode. He left the main house to go to Aroth in order to learn magic after the bloodline continuation ceremony ended. However, his talent was not enough to become Loberian's disciple. Cyan adds that Iode managed to enter the Red Tower through connections, but in these 4 years, he's been wasting his time. Cyan continues saying that Eugene won't be able to learn magic and stay in the main house at the same time, and if he ends up deciding to move to Aroth, Seal will end up being sad. Eugene doesn't care about that statement and starts leaving. Cyan asks him where he's going, and Eugene replies that he's going to meet the head of the family to report his 3-star level status and see if he gets permission to leave and study magic. Once Eugene is gone, Cyan kicks his sword, still frustrated to see how the gap between him and Eugene keeps growing every day. Inside the mansion, Gilite is surprised by Eugene's request, asking if he's being serious. Eugene confirms, saying that he wants to depart to Aroth in order to learn magic. Gilite demands to know the reason. Eugene is not only the youngest 3-star level in history, but he also has the potential to reach the 4-star level with his current training style before becoming an adult. Eugene answers that, after reaching the 3-star level, he realized that following the same strategy in the main house won't allow him to grow further. He continues, saying that there are many things he still wants to learn, and with magic, he could view mana from a different perspective. Eugene's certain that learning magic will end up being worth it to him in the end. He bows, asking for Gilite's understanding. With a smile, Gilite says that he cannot suppress Eugene's desire to learn and understands him. But before allowing it, Eugene must promise him that he won't take part in black magic. In Aroth, there is a black tower, where black magicians gather. In the current era, they are not considered dangerous and hold a decent reputation. However, the Lionhearts are the descendants of the Great Vermouth, and so they are against black magic. Inwardly, Eugene clearly remembers black magic, and the kind of disgusting things its users did 300 years ago. Eugene dismisses Gilite's worries since he also despises black magic. After the meeting, Eugene is walking through the mansion. Suddenly, he hears someone calling him from behind one of the doors. With a smirk, Eugene tells the person to come out if they want to talk about something, but the person behind the door refuses to come out. It is revealed that Seal was behind the door all this time, and she asks if Eugene is really going to Aroth. She asks why he's leaving, and Eugene says that he wants to learn magic, to which she replies that they have elemental magic, and he could just call a magician from the capital. She finishes by saying that if he leaves, she and Cyan could become stronger and catch up to him. Eugene is glad to hear that. After all, the sparring between them could become more entertaining. Ciel asks how long he'll be gone, and Eugene replies that he doesn't know, but it could be a few years at least. She asks if he has thought about his father. Eugene is sure he will be okay. After all, he's already used to living in the main mansion, and has even lost weight from going hunting a lot. He finally tells Ciel to train diligently and starts leaving. Before he gets too far, Ciel finally opens the door of her room and once more asks Eugene if he's really leaving. He just waves his hand as a farewell. Ciel stays there, her face expressing the pain of seeing him go. She also wants Eugene to stay. Now Eugene is in a meeting with his father. Gerhard asks him to be careful in Aroth and not to slack off with his studies. Eugene counters, telling his dad not to stop exercising just because he won't be around. With a proud expression, Gerhard stands in front of his son, amazed at how tall Eugene has become. He finishes by telling his son to take care of himself. After a while, Eugene stands in front of the portal to Aroth in the presence of the other members of the family. Gilite asks him if he doesn't want any guards to accompany him. Eugene replies that it won't be necessary since he can defend himself. Gilite was expecting that answer. After all, he's already at the 3-star level, unlike his son Iode. The most affected by Eugene's departure are Cyan and Ciel, both with a sad expression, and Gerhard, who can't stop crying. Eugene asks his dad to stop, reminding him that he wasn't that emotional when they talked earlier. He tells him that he's leaving anyway and should at least try to say farewell with a smile. Gerhard wipes his tears, and they both share a smile. Eugene finally says goodbye and crosses the portal. The portal takes him to Pentagon, the capital of the Aroth Kingdom, a city where the 5 magic towers form a pentagon with the castle at its center. Eugene is in a floating car, soaring over the city. He's been to Aroth before, but it's very different from what he saw 300 years ago. Aroth is the only city that keeps its warp gate in the sky. They use floating stations to symbolize their excellence in magic. Back in the vehicle, the city guide emphasizes how magnificent the metropolis is, saying that the floating views are a vital part of Aroth's culture. The guide adds that the city has 15 floating stations, all of them created by the wise Sienna. He is about to explain the main landmarks in the city, but Eugene interrupts him, saying that he's interested in visiting Sienna's mansion. The guide compliments his choice since, besides the mansion, the other 2 main attractions are the magic towers and the nighttime view. He starts explaining that 300 years ago, Sienna became the youngest magic tower master in history after returning from the demon realm, which is why she has a statue in the Green Magic Towers Square. The mansion where Eugene wants to go was the place where Sienna lived until she departed 200 years ago. Eugene asks if anyone knows where she went, but the guide only says that many mages tried to track her down, but sadly no one was able to find her whereabouts. The guide adds that he has a theory that Sienna went to Helmuth, the demon realm. He believes so because when she disappeared, it marked the 100th year since she left behind Hamel's body and returned from the demon world. She wanted to avenge her fallen companion, and that's why she wanted to leave. Full of admiration for Sienna, the guide mentions that Hamel had a crush on her and even confessed his feelings when he was on the verge of death. This statement infuriates Eugene, who demands the guide stop spreading lies with a menacing tone. But he quickly calms down, aware that he's the only one who knows the real story. The guide quickly picks up on the atmosphere, commenting that Eugene must dislike the romantic tale about Hamel and Sienna. He says there are more theories about what happened to her. Some believe that since Sienna was against dark magic and the construction of the Dark Tower, a group of violent dark mages decided to eliminate her. Getting angry again, Eugene says it's impossible that those lowly dark mages could even harm Sienna. However, Eugene considers that maybe a demon king could have been responsible. The Dark Tower acts as a connection to Helmuth, and perhaps Sienna's existence was an obstacle for them, one that needed to be removed. The floating car finally lands, and Eugene stands in front of the last known place where Sienna resided. Eugene is surprised by the large number of people gathered outside the mansion, and the guide explains that they are students preparing for the tower's recruitment test. The reason why they stay outside is because the entrance fee is very high, to which Eugene asks why, and the guide replies that it's simply because people are willing to pay it. Everything is driven by the legend that says if you pray in front of Sienna's portrait in the central hall, you will pass the tower recruitment exam. They finally reach the entrance, and the guide hands a black card to the guards. Upon realizing that a member of the Lionheart family is present, they immediately open the mansion's doors and let him in. The guide tells Eugene that he'll wait for him outside, and for now, he should enjoy the view of the mansion. The door closes, and Eugene stands in the entryway, excited to see how Sienna used to live. Eugene is walking through the mansion, amazed by its size and the fact that Sienna lived there for 100 years. We are transported 300 years into the past, to a moment when Sienna asked Hamel about his future plans while inside a dungeon. Hamel counters by asking why she's bringing that up all of a sudden, to which she replies that he's still in his prime, and it would be natural to seek happiness once their mission is complete. Hamel continues wrapping his bandages, saying that he never gave it much thought. While pointing at a sleeping Moron, she tells Hamel that she heard Moron wants to become a king. Hamel laughs upon hearing that, wondering how someone could become a king just by wanting it. With a melancholic gaze, she tells him to let it be. After all, everyone deserves to dream. Hamel gets perplexed by her expression, even thinking that she might be drunk. Just repeating her words in his mind makes him shiver from the cringe. Sienna gets angry. She's being serious for once, and he's making fun of her. Hamel doesn't care and asks if she has any plans herself. Sienna is taken aback. She wasn't expecting to share her thoughts. Finally, she opens up and reveals that she wants to get married, have children, and eventually become a grandmother. This memory crosses Eugene's mind when he finds Sienna's portrait in one of the mansion's hallways. Eugene thinks that she deserved to meet a good man, start a family, and live peacefully, but can't figure out why she chose to live alone for a century. Unconsciously, his hand starts reaching toward the picture until a guard suddenly appears and yells that touching is not allowed. Eugene gets annoyed for a moment but decides to continue his search. Now he heads toward the library in the basement. He arrives and starts checking the books on the shelves, hoping to find any kind of clue. But again, the guard appears and yells that he can't touch the books, frustrating Eugene once more. He then recalls the moment he found his old necklace in Vermouth's vault and how his gaze was drawn to it. He starts wondering if, like Tempest, the necklace recognized his soul and decided to show up. If that's the case, someone must have intervened in his reincarnation. And if by any chance that person was Sienna, she would have left him something. After checking the entire mansion, Eugene returns to look at Sienna's portrait. He explored every room but couldn't find any clues. His frustration grows. He doesn't even know what he's supposed to be searching for. Eugene decides to focus on his own matters. If Sienna truly wanted to tell him something, she should have left the message in a clear place. Without any information, there's nothing he can do. Eugene glances around and notices the guard is not watching. He uses the chance to flip Sienna's portrait and dares her to show up if she doesn't like his attitude. But nothing happens, as expected. He finally leaves, telling her to find him if she's still alive. Eugene exits the mansion and it's already night. The guide fakes a smile, assuming Eugene had a great time inside the mansion. He clearly didn't expect to be waiting until nightfall. But his fake smile turns genuine after Eugene tosses him a gold coin as a tip for waiting. Energized again, the guide offers to take Eugene to a great restaurant, but Eugene cuts him off, saying he wants to go to the Red Tower, and after that, he won't need his services anymore. They're soaring through the skies again, and Eugene asks the guide a question. He wants to know if the guide knows anything about Iode Lionheart, his older brother. Immediately, the guide gets nervous, saying that Iode is well known in the city. Eugene tells him that Iode has a connection to the Red Tower and has been living there for 4 years. He wants to hear the rumors about his brother. The guide hesitates, not wanting to offend Eugene or his family. Eugene notices and swears not to reveal anything from their conversation under his name. The guide begins, saying that it's rumored Iode seeks pleasure every night outside the Magic Tower. Eugene recalls that by now, Iode must be 19 years old and that he should be allowed to enjoy himself without being judged. But the guide adds that it's not just ordinary pleasure, it involves succubi. Once Eugene processes the idea, he bursts into a fury toward Iode. Still angry, he asks the guide why there are succubi in the city if they're supposed to be in Helmuth. The guide explains that the Black Tower doesn't only host dark mages, but also some demons. Eugene can't believe what Iode is doing. And to confirm, he asks if Iode is messing around with succubi from the Black Tower. The guide corrects him. He's not just fooling around, he's actively seeking pleasure. Aroth has an alley that's famous for its black market, where succubi offer their services. It's said that Iode frequently visits that place. Eugene asks for the name of the alley, and the guide says it's called Bolero Alley. He adds that it's not open every day. Only during full moons it transforms into a corrupted alley. Eugene gets furious. He didn't want to get involved with Iode while in Aroth, but he can't allow the eldest son of Vermouth's house to keep fooling around with succubi. The guide notices Eugene's expression and begs him not to say anything, but Eugene dismisses his concerns. He already swore under his name. He intends to teach Iode a lesson, but it's just a rumor. For now, he'll have to hold back until he has enough evidence. Eugene plans to visit Bolero Alley during the full moon, a near future, since after looking up at the sky, he sees the moon is in the waxing gibbous phase. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.